ever wanted to send an email directly from within a line of business application where the email contains live data housed in that application and do it at the click of a button? I know I have, and that's why we created ScrapeMailer. With ScrapeMailer, you simply create a template that contains the static content portion of your email and then wire it to the screens from which you want to send that email. From that point forward, those applications are set up to send contextually personalized emails using data contained within those screens to your customers, colleagues, or whomever. In this video, I'll walk you through the process of doing just that, creating a ScrapeMailer template, wiring it to an application screen, and sending an email. And don't worry, I'll keep it pretty high level so you can quickly get a sense for if ScrapeMailer is for you. If you want to do a deeper dive, feel free to download ScrapeMailer, check out the docs if you're into that sort of thing, and play around. Let's start with installing ScrapeMailer. ScrapeMailer is what's called a ratchet-x action pack, meaning ratchet-x is the runtime application, or player if you will, that's needed to create and send ScrapeMails. This being the case, you must first install ratchet-x and then install the ScrapeMailer action pack. Assuming you've installed ratchet-x, which is available as a free download from our website, let's install the ScrapeMailer action pack. You do so by selecting Tools, Install Action Pack, and then selecting ScrapeMailer from the list of action packs on the left. Then click the Install button. When you do, the action pack is installed. After the installation, Commander refreshes itself and registers the ScrapeMailer action pack, which you can see by selecting Commander's Action tab. Great, I can see ScrapeMailer has been installed, so let's create a ScrapeMail. The first thing we need to do is create a ScrapeMail template, or what we call a merge file. Merge files are created using the ScrapeMailer editor. We load the editor by right-clicking on the ScrapeMailer action pack and then clicking on Load ScrapeMailer Editor. When we do, the editor loads in new merge file mode. Now there's no right way or order in which to create your merge file. Personally, I like to create the static portions of my merge file first. Once I create the static content, I then know what data sources I'll need to create, but it's really up to you and the way you want to work. In this example, we'll create a template that when executed composes a support request reply email. This is the same demo that's covered in the tutorial described in our documentation and whose assets come pre-configured with ScrapeMailer, so don't worry about catching each keystroke. Again, at this point, you just want to get a feel for the product. So when we load the editor, notice that there are a number of defaults already selected for us. Since in our case, our users are Outlook for Windows users, we'll leave all the email provider parameters configured with their default values. Next, let's move on to the static portion of our email. To save time, rather than having you watch me type it all in, let's drop in some text and take a look at it. Note that for illustrative purposes, I've inserted the word blank where I'll want to insert live data, either gathered from the user or mapped from an application screen at runtime. Keep in mind, inserting blank is not necessary when you create your own merge file. So the text reads, "Hello, blank blank." Well, that was fast. These blanks will eventually be replaced by the customer's first and last names, which are available within the screen we'll be mapping a little later. Back to the text. Thank you for contacting the Hardin Parts Customer Support Center. Per our discussion, your order is due to ship on blank. Now, the shipping value does not reside in my application, but during calls with our customers, we often agree to have orders delivered by a certain date. So that value will be collected from the user by the ScrapeMailer at runtime via a data source called a prompter. As the name implies, a prompter is a ScrapeMailer data source that gets its runtime value from the user sending the email rather than the mapped application screen. We'll get into the details of data sources in a little bit, but for now, just remember this value will be supplied by the user. Moving on. In the unlikely event your order is delayed, I will call you at blank. This value will be replaced by the customer's home phone number, which is in the application screen. Continuing. Also, based on your most recent order, you may be interested in the following items, which are detailed in the attached parts catalog, blank. The blank will be replaced with a comma-separated list of specific parts I'd like to recommend to the customer. The list of parts will be selected by the user at runtime and collected via a prompt list. Next, please let me know if I can assist you further with these item recommendations. Sincerely, Jim Warren, followed by my email signature, which as you can see contains a graphic. Finally, we'll need to insert a subject line for the email, which in this case is static. And then we'll need an email recipient, which we can get from the application screen and insert it into the To Address field. So now that we have the static portion of our email complete, let's create our data sources so we can insert them in place of the blanks. In total, we'll need to create the following 6 data sources: first name, last name, phone number, email address, delivery date, and product recommendations. The first 4 data sources will be mapped from the application screen, so those data sources will be of type snippet, and the last 2 will be gathered from the user via prompters. Let's first create the first name snippet. We do so by clicking the Create Snippet button and completing the subsequent dialog. Since snippets get their runtime values from the map screen, all we need to enter here is the name of the field and a test value, which will be used when testing the merge file. So here we'll enter the snippet name, first name, and the test value, John. When done, we click the OK button. The other 3 snippets are just more of the same, so let's fast forward and pretend you watched me type it all in. Now let's create our first prompter. Since prompters gather their values from the user at runtime, configuring them is a little bit more involved, but not much. In this case, we want to create the delivery date prompter. To do so, click the Create Prompter button. The first parameter we need to configure is the prompter type, and our choices are text, list, and password. Since we're gathering a date string, we'll select type prompt text. Then, like snippets, we need to give it a name. Let's call it delivery date. Then we need to supply a caption, which is the label text that will be presented to the user at runtime when the prompt is requested. Let's enter the text, please enter projected delivery date, and list in parentheses the format in which we want the date entered. For the occurrences parameter, let's configure it to prompt the user each time the scrape mail is executed. Finally, we can enter a validation pattern which will enforce the format of the value entered at runtime. The validation pattern is a regular expression. In this case, we'll supply a regex that validates the date format in the format listed in the prompter caption. When done, let's click the OK button and proceed. Finally, we want to create the list prompter, which will present the user a list of recommended products. To do this, again, we click the Create Prompter button. In this case, we'll change the default prompter type to prompt list. When we do, note that the configuration parameters in the dialog change a little bit to accommodate the requirements of this prompter type. The difference here being that instead of entering a validation pattern, we'll enter an itemized list that will be presented to the user. So let's configure the other parameters with these values. And the list parameter with these 3 items. Let's click the OK button to finish up. Now that all our data sources are defined, we can insert them in place of the blanks. Inserting data sources is as easy as placing the cursor where you want to insert the data source, right-clicking, selecting Insert Data Source from the context menu, and then selecting the source we want to insert. Let me take a moment to insert the rest of the data sources. The last thing we need to do is supply an attachment. As you may recall, our email makes reference to a parts catalog. To have that attached to every email, we need to go to the attachments section, click the Include These Files checkbox, and supply a link to the document we want to attach. Now that we've created the merge file, let's perform a quick test to make sure it works the way we want it to work. To perform a test, let's click the Test Merge button. When we do, we're prompted with the first of the 2 prompters, which is for the delivery date. After we supply that, we're then asked to select the recommended products via the prompt list. In this case, we'll select the cotter bolts and the pinder fastener. After that, the editor goes into read-only mode and the email is constructed using the data collected via the prompters and the snippet test values. Remember, we haven't wired this merge file to a screen yet, so there is no real-time screen data available. That's why we assign test values for snippets. This email looks good, so let's save the merge file and move on to wiring it to our application screen. Now that our merge file has been created, it's time to wire it to an application screen and make it operational. The application we're going to wire up is MyCRM, which is a sample demonstration application that ships with RatchetX. To load MyCRM, open Commander, click Tools, and then click Load Sample App MyCRM for Windows from the subsequent menu. Now with MyCRM loaded and the People tab active, we'll load the RatchetX AppSpace Wizard to wire up the scrape mail. To load the AppSpace Wizard, again, we load Commander, click the Action tab, right-click on the action named Scrape Mail or Action Pack, and then select Create AppSpace using Wizard from the subsequent menu. This will load the first step of the 4-step wizard. In this step, the first thing we need to do is select the merge file we just created. We then enter a caption. The caption is the text that will be displayed to the user at runtime if and when the scrape mailer is presented as an alert via the magic button. Let's enter the caption, Send Customer Support Email. Let's click the next button to proceed. Step 2 is where we select the screen we want to wire in. We do so by dragging the Select a Screen crosshair icon over the screen and releasing. When we do, the wizard analyzes the screen and determines what it needs to uniquely identify this screen at runtime. In most cases, the default values are what you want, so we'll accept them here. Click the next button to proceed. Step 3 is where most of the action happens. This is where we map the screen fields to our merge files snippets. Note the snippets we created in our merge file are listed in the list on the left. We now need to tell the wizard which fields on the MyCRM screen contain the data we want fed into each snippet at runtime. To map a field, all we have to do is select the snippet we want to map, drag the crosshairs to the data field, not the label, and then let go. When we do, the wizard will do some analysis and select some default values. Again, the defaults are usually what we want. You can ensure the wizard made the correct choice by making sure the value displayed in the text field matches the value you expected to be extracted. So now we'll map the rest of the fields and then click the next button to proceed. Finally, we reach step 4. In this step, we supply some header information such as application name, the screen name we're integrating, and a brief description. These are free-form fields into which you can enter whatever you like. When we're done, we click the Finish button. This will cause Commander to refresh itself with the newly created app space and renders the Scrape Mailer Magic button in the MyCRM title bar. Now we're ready to execute our new Scrape Mail. To do so, all we have to do is click the magic button. When we do, the first question we're asked is to select a send email operation. As you recall, when we created our merge file, we selected all send email operations as valid, so at runtime the user needs to select which option he wants to execute. In this case, we'll select Preview this email, which will compose the scrape mail in Outlook, but will not actually send it, giving me an opportunity to preview the email before it's sent out. Next, we're prompted to supply the delivery date. In this case, we'll enter 12/16/2016. After that, we're prompted to select the products we want to recommend. In this case, we'll select the cotter bolts and pinder fastener. We'll then click the Finish button, which will create the scrape mail in my Outlook client. As you can see, the email has been created and all the data fed from the MyCRM screen or collected via prompters has been inserted into the applicable locations in the email. To finish up, I click the Send button in Outlook and I'm done. From this point forward, any person in my organization can send the same email from the People tab in my CRM. Of course, the dynamic portions will be replaced with the data related to the record they're working on and using the answers they supply to the prompters. That's pretty neat. As you can see, creating application data contextual emails from any application is very powerful, yet an easy thing to set up and execute. If you want to try it out for yourself, feel free to download RatchetX from our site and install the Scrape Mailer Action Pack. As always, if you have any ideas regarding how to make it better or have any questions, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your time and enjoy the Scrape Mailer Action Pack.